with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thanks so much for joining our housing call this morning. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. The top three things this week that we're going to talk about: the 21st Century Road to Housing Act passed in the Senate last week. It does face some opposition on a few of the changes that were made as it goes to the House or tries to go through the House, so we'll talk through that. The Trump administration issues two executive orders on housing. And then we're just going to do some data highlights on some recent reports that were released. One is the National Low Income Housing Coalition's The Gap Report. And then there's also the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard's America's Rental Housing 2026 report. On the organizational side, many of you already know this. You've been reaching out to us, and so thank you for that. We have released our 2026 county profiles as of, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So if you want to see the county profiles from this year, feel free to click the link in our call notes or just go to our website. And then remember, there is a gallery that you can use to view and download all the past profiles that we have for all 100 counties as well. So if you are a data nerd like we are, and you want to see just past data and how things have progressed, go ahead and check out that gallery. We also just want to lift up, give a friendly reminder, we have some events coming up. Make sure that you register for North Carolina Housing Day 2026, taking place on April 29th with some training and networking happening the day before on April 28th. Registration is going to close on April 3rd. So we hope that you make sure to come out, represent your district, your county, your work, as we meet with elected officials in the General Assembly and talk to them about the importance of housing. Also, want to remind you that you now are able to register for this year's Bringing It Home, Ending Homelessness in North Carolina conference. This will be taking place on May 27th to the 28th at the McKimmon Center in Raleigh. And it's geared towards homelessness services professionals and allies, so that we can gather to learn and network and collaborate with each other and with other industry experts from across North Carolina and beyond. Last week, if you wondered, okay, why are we having a housing call? So Anna and myself, we traveled to Washington, D.C. for the National Low Income Housing Coalition's 2026 Policy Forum. I was really excited not only to see friends and colleagues from across the country doing this work, but have the privilege of speaking on two different panels this year. One about building political will among federal disarray and sort of the volatility in this climate and what it means to be in the housing and community development space. And another, as a member of the North Carolina Inclusive Disaster Recovery Network, then the second panel representing both myself in that role and the coalition, talking about disaster-related organizing at the state and local levels and different things that have worked. So big shout out to the National Income Housing Coalition for those opportunities, as well as for my colleagues at the North Carolina Inclusive Disaster Recovery Network for letting me speak about the wonderful work that the network is doing. On Friday, as a way to wrap up the week, we participated in Hill Day as well, and we met with several members of our North Carolina congressional delegation on Capitol Hill. We met with the offices of Senators Ted Budd and Tom Tillis, Representative Chuck Edwards, Representative Harrigan, Representative Tim Moore, Representative Foushee, and Representative Ross. And so we just want to send a special thank you to these offices for taking the time out of their busy schedules to spend some time with us to discuss pending legislation. We know it was a busy week, not only because of the things happening on the Senate side, but as appropriations conversations are happening, and with members traveling to and fro. We really appreciate the staff that took the time to meet with us and talk us through what they're seeing, and then also ask us questions about what we're seeing on the ground here in North Carolina. So we really look forward to continuing to build those relationships and collaborate with those offices to bring more affordable housing to our state. On the federal side, continuing that line of discussion, while we were in DC, it was pretty exciting actually. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act passed in the Senate. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation that combines a lot of elements from the 21st Century Housing for the 21st Century Act and the Road to Housing Act. So they just combined those two titles. This passed in the Senate with overwhelming support on Thursday, March 12th, and it combines several pieces of both of those bills, like I mentioned, but it's the most significant housing package to pass in more than 30 years. Republicans in the House seem to be openly divided on the legislation after there's some language limiting investor ownership of single-family homes that was added in. The House Freedom Caucus has taken issue with several provisions of the bill, as well as a provision to limit investor ownership of single-family homes and a provision related to the Federal Reserve issuing digital currency. So there are a lot of discussions that need to be had um, from our meetings that we had on the Hill. It seems like there's just some disagreement on definitions of investor ownership, and so hoping that the wording around that and the definition can be worked out. The bill, it seems like, is expected to go into conference for the House and the Senate to kind of iron out their disagreements. And so we have linked here in the call notes a little bit more about the latest version of the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. But you can also see both original versions of the bills that passed their respective chambers too. So you can see kind of the path that they've come down. Also, on March 13th, this past Friday, while we were in DC, the Trump administration signed two executive orders that were related to housing. The first order is aimed at increasing access to mortgages through community banks, and the second is aimed at loosening construction regulations. Now, there has been some mixed reactions. There's concerns that these executive orders could potentially complicate negotiations between the House and the Senate on the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. And in addition to that, the president has also indicated that he will not sign any legislation until Congress passes legislation requiring onerous proof of citizenship requirements for voter registration, which already doesn't have the votes it needs to pass. So we'll link both of those executive orders in the call notes. The first on promoting access to mortgage credit, and the second on removing regulatory barriers to affordable home construction. Another piece at the federal and national level, there is a lot of concern, and we heard this from our colleagues at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, and then some of the folks that from North Carolina, like from Western North Carolina, our friends at Mountain Housing Opportunities that were part of Hill Day with us. Just concerned about some of the USDA programs that are really pivotal for affordable homeownership and development that seem to be being phased out and are really under threat. So one such program is the USDA Section 515 program, and to date, this program has created more than 500,000 homes in rural areas by offering developers below market rate loans to develop affordable housing. The last Section 515 loans were issued in 2011, and by 2050, almost all homes built through the program will have reached the end of their period of affordability. In recent years, we know that housing affordability has become an issue, not just for urban cities, but for rural areas as well. And so this is another program that we know was lifted up in conversation on Hill Day and that we will continue to track and pay attention to. Moving on to state updates, there are some key House committees meeting this week. One of which we will be at in person. So tomorrow at 9:30, the House Select Committee on Involuntary Commitment and Public Safety will be meeting at the General Assembly in Raleigh, and then at 10 a.m. We will be at the House Select Committee on Property Tax Reduction and Reform. There's word that there might be some recommendations released or discussed at the committee meeting, so we are looking forward to hearing about that. In terms of reports, events, and resources, just want to lift up the reports that we mentioned. The first being the 2026 GAP report. So the National Low-Income Housing Coalition released their 2026 GAP report, and this report shows the affordable and available rental homes available by state for the lowest income renters in our communities. So the nationwide report found that no state in the country has an adequate supply of affordable rental housing for the lowest income renters again this year. And so in the report, North Carolina's data shows that of the approximately 350,000 extremely low-income renter households that we have in our state, there is less than 134,000 affordable and available units for them. For more highlights, we did do a post kind of highlighting the different components of the report and diving into the North Carolina data, but it says a lot about the state of the need in our state and in our country. There's also a new report that we'll be excited to dive into now that we're back from DC, America's Rental Housing 2026, out of the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University. There are several reports out also from that same division of Harvard University. There is from deposits to fees, looking at renters struggling with upfront costs and what those barriers look like. There is also a piece on how more states requiring landlords to disclose flood risks, how that is looking, what those trends look like, but what the laws are looking like and how they vary nationwide, depending on the state and political climate. Out of the Turner Center, there is a report looking at the cost of fragmentation and a comparison of the state affordable housing finance governance systems and what impact that might have. We also want to lift up that there is a webinar coming up hosted by the North Carolina League of Municipalities this Thursday, March 19th from 2 to 3 p.m., looking at the city perspective on housing. You can learn more and register at the link in the call notes. However, you must be a member of the North Carolina League of Municipalities in order to sign up. So if you are listening and you're a member of the league, make sure to check out that webinar on the city perspective on housing. Also want to lift up that there will be another webinar hosted by the Urban Institute on the impact of the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act. The Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, Local Lessons and the Way Forward. This is happening on Monday, March 30th from 12 to 4 p.m. The Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act is one piece of legislation that North Carolina has not been able to pass. It's come up several times over the last several years, and it's one that would be really impactful in heirs property work. And so if you're interested in that side of policy and in heirs property or ownership, make sure to check out the link in the call notes that we have there for you as well. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much again for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions or you want us to focus on anything in particular, don't hesitate to reach out. We will talk to you next time. Have a great rest of your week.